of Laura Walsh.
She was stabbed 3 times.
Sexually assaulted.
And set on fire on the couch.
Donald denies knowing Laura, having sex with Laura, anything having to do with her world. The name of the person whose DNA came back is Donald Wright. We believe that we've identified Laura's killer, so now we're focusing on the double homicide of good friends Gene Giddens and Keith Durrington, which occurred 5 months after Laura's murder.
Gene had recently moved back from Hawaii, and he decided to have a house party that night. Firefighters arrive on scene, they're doing the checks, then they find 2 burned bodies. Both victims had their throats cut. The fire was used blatantly to conceal the murder.
Gene and Keith's crime scene seems similar to Laura's, so it's possible Donald Wright was involved. But the challenge is that Gene and Keith's killer did not leave a murder weapon or DNA behind. And we've got 10 other potential suspects, all with strong motives, and any of them could be Gene and Keith's killer. There's a group of feuding neighbors who sold Gene drugs that day, a potential arsonist, and a group of ex-cons who lived in Donald's father's house, who allegedly showed up at Gene's house looking for cash that night. And the gang of teenagers who pointed fingers at each other, and one of them even signed a confession that they were all involved in the murders.
I told them about going in there and being a part of the murders.
This is the biggest, most difficult case we have ever tried to solve. It's going to be a huge challenge.
Yes, ma'am.
His family?
Keith's family, yes.
And then from Gene's family?
We're meeting his sister Camilla and his brother John.
Okay. Before we jump into our investigation of Gene and Keith's murders, we want to meet their families. Hi, I'm Kelly, who were brought together because of this horrible crime 23 years ago. Thank y'all for all coming down here for us to talk to you. You've been working on this for a while.
I'm just so glad that somebody cares enough to try to figure it out now.
And Kimberly, you're in law enforcement.
I was about a 3-year veteran at the time.
How does that affect everything?
I probably talk about it more than anybody because when there's somebody out there that needs that comfort, I know a little bit more than the normal person because I've gone through it.
Can y'all tell us some good stories about your brother?
I have a daughter who at the time was 3 years old. Her name is Madeline. He had a little make-believe world that he spent a lot of time in with her. The last night that I remember him being alive, he really was quite depressed, especially after he was diagnosed HIV. He was crying and telling me he was so afraid to die, but that he was so thankful that he had Madeline in his life.
Well, he was only 30 years old, Gene, and Keith was only 23 years old.
23 years old.
How have you handled it?
Well, it was a horrible day, the day that I learned that he had been killed. All of our dreams for him, his talent, his wit, his laugh, they were all gone. And it's still that hard today. But we have the memories. When he had his first piano lesson, he was hooked. And he was good.
He was an amazing pianist. He was amazing. He was really gifted.
Was Gene musical too?
Oh, very much. That was one thing they had very much in common.
Yeah.
And when Keith was actually staying at our house, they were in there playing dueling pianos.
Oh, wow.
And they were hugely talented, both of them. Hugely talented.
No one can promise you results, you know that. But we're going to try our hardest. It's so devastating to listen to what all these 2 families have lost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For everything you're doing. Nice to finally meet you.
Fortunately, the White Settlement Police Department never gave up on this case. It's time for us to go back to the station and start working on what happened after Gene's party ended 23 years ago.
The party broke about 10:30 to 11, and the last people left were Gene and Keith. They were both very intoxicated. There was known to be narcotics there that night, just in the form of weed or marijuana, and acid was supposed to have been involved as well.
They're drunken party, and he probably didn't even lock the back door.
May not even lock the front door.
He may not have even locked the front door, exactly.
On the day of the murder, Gene cashed a severance check for $3,000 to help pay for the party he planned that night. When you have a party going on and you've got booze and drugs involved and it's almost open to anybody that shows up, it provides opportunity for several people that have committed this crime.
I think the killer killed them, left. Day goes by. Nobody's reported it yet. They hadn't been found. There's not cops everywhere. Let's see if we can conceal this crime with a fire.
The fact that arson was used to cover up this crime scene is the biggest similarity between this case and Laura's.
He tries to set the fire on her chest.
And in this room, the fire is set where?
At the bodies.
On the bodies.
On the bodies.
But we believe that Laura's murder occurred to cover up a sexual assault, while the motive in Jean and Keith's murder was burglary. Those are very different types of crimes.
Wasn't a large amount of people there.
But what a motley crew of people.
A very motley crew of people.
Since so many people may have had opportunity and motive, we have 11 different suspects from 3 different worlds to look into. And any of them could be Jean and Keith's killer. You want to do the TJ world first? Okay, so we got Jason Inman, and then we have
TJ Scooble.
And then we have
Wesley Taylor.
He's dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
Our first group of suspects lived next door to Jean. We're calling them the neighbors. A couple of them sold drugs to Jean the day of the party.
Wes and Jason were the ones that went to the house and did the transaction, according to the witnesses at the party.
And Jason also rips him off, right? He licks it himself. Wes and Jason reportedly sold Jean some used tabs of acid, and that started a feud among the neighbors that led to them all implicating each other.
Wes was mad at Jason because he was afraid that it was going to get back that Wes was the one who ripped him off, and he didn't want that word on the street that he was ripping people off, which would hurt his dope sales.
So they're pointing the finger at each other.
Mm-hmm. But together, and also independently, they'd point at TJ also.
Well, you have various statements throughout the interviews talking about Jason and TJ wanting to go over and get more money from Jean.
The question is, did they know about Jean's $3,000?
They knew. A girlfriend of Wes drove him to cash the check. So, yeah, they all knew.
Okay, let's do these.
The second group of suspects, we referred to them as the teenagers.
They all were kind of like a little bicycle gang. Just a bunch of weed smokers and
petty thieves.
They weren't even looked at until 2 years after the murders.
Yeah. Brandon Fortish was implicated, as well as James Howard, Jason Campbell, and Bryce Wilson, because a guy that lived in town at the time had heard them bragging about doing this murder.
And then when you go to them, James Howard is only 14 years old. You have a statement in your file.
Statement says that he was hanging out with Bryce and Brandon and Jason. They said, hey, we're going to go over to this house. They went over there. He said he waited out by the creek while Jason and Brandon went inside, heard yelling and shouting, and then he said Bryce got a gas can and poured gas and then threw a match. And
the fact that James made a signed confession implicating himself and others is a big thing. The problem was certain details of that confession never lined up with the true facts of the case. So the police never charged these suspects with the crime. And then later on, when he's interviewed again orally, he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember that. But the teenagers were never completely eliminated, and we're going to have to take a look at them. Now let's focus on our right world of suspects. And we'll start up here with Donald, because we already have him up under Laura's murder. There's no evidence that Donald knew either Jean or Keith. However, he was connected to 3 different people with links to the victims.
Who are those 3 that you have there?
Randy, Ricky, Raymond.
We're calling our last group the right group because they all had connections with Donald. They were either related to him or they lived in Donald's father's house. All of the right group has extensive criminal histories, including arson, burglary, and drugs.
Okay, what are we going to put first under Donald Wright for our double?
He's a burglar looking for money.
He's a burglar. How far does he live from the double?
About 4 or 5 walks.
How many minutes walk?
I'd say I'd average it to 7 minutes.
He lives with several of the party goers.
Yeah, Randy and Butch.
Lives with fellow partiers.
There's no record that Donald attended Jean's party, but his 2 friends did. Randy Huggins and Raymond Butch Bailey, who was also Donald's cousin, showed up uninvited.
What do you want to put under Raymond?
He was at the party with Randy.
Drinking.
Randy and Butch say they left last.
So, last one to see him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was the one that drove him and Randy to the party. He's the one that
He drove
home.
Randy walks home.
Mm-hmm. Walks an odd route home when he could have had a ride.
Butch and Randy drove to the party together. But when they went to leave, Randy chose to walk home. Randy walking home is strange because Butch is leaving at the same time and they're both going to the same house.
If he's lying about the walking, what's his reason for lying?
My theory is he says, I want to walk, he goes back to the house.
And does the crime?
And does the crime, and then he walks home.
We can't convict somebody because he likes to walk.
I know, but you can question him as to
Yeah.
odd.
He was an escapee out of Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't like he broke out of prison. He's on a work furlough type
just walks
detail.
away.
He just walks away.
I'll put escapee in quotes. The 4th suspect in this group is Ricky Huggins, Randy's brother and Donald Wright's brother-in-law, who says he was not at the party.
He lives across the street from the party.
Arson priors?
Arson arrest? Yeah.
Ricky's history of arson and his connection with the rest of the Wright group makes you wonder whether or not he committed this crime alone, if he may have committed it with other members of the Wright group, or if it's just a coincidence and he had nothing to do with it at all. Randy can cover for Butch, and Butch can cover for Randy, and Ricky is maybe out of it because he's saying he didn't even go to the party, but nobody can say where Donald is.
Right.
And the only reason we think Donald's a possible suspect is because of a similar case 5 months prior. The problem is they're all related, and they're all in the same world, and it's hard to get any of them to talk about the other.
We have about 50, 60 witnesses to talk to.
It seems like
in about 7 different states.
Piece of cake. We're in White Settlement, Texas, investigating the double murder of Gene Giddens and his friend, Keith Durrington.
Can I have a seat right there?
Hey, man, how you doing? I'm Alan Brown. I came in to help try to see if we can help out with this case from 1992, since at least one member of our teenage group of suspects at one point confessed to committing this crime. It makes sense for us to learn more about them. Well, the case that we're looking at is the Giddens case, which is the 2 guys that were killed and the house caught on fire. Our first witness was known to spend time with Brandon, Jason, Bryce, and James at the time of the crime. You remember some guys you knew back then, James Howard and Brandon Forte?
Yeah, yeah. They were a big circle.
And you hung out with them too?
Brandon, me and him never hung out. Back then, you know, he was like, you know, the devil worshiper, and he'd come over to my house right when I first met him, and my mom had a big picture of Jesus on the wall, and he took down and put a big pentagram on there, you know. And, yeah, and that didn't fly too well, you know.
But it didn't.
I bet.
Out of that group, who were you the best of the friends with?
Right, James Howard, he was with me that night that it all happened. And we just did the fire trucks, you know what I mean?
Were y'all out riding bikes that night?
Yeah.
That's how y'all got around as a group, was on bikes?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's when we seen the fire trucks, you know, and we was like, well, I'm gonna go check it out. You know, and I had no clue at all if anybody died or anything.
This witness gives James an alibi on the night of the fire. But the fact remains, James signed a confession stating he was involved in both the murder and the arson. What did James ever tell you about why he wrote that statement out?
He said it was all bullshit. He said the cops made that statement. They was trying to tell me that James pleaded to doing it, and I was like, no, I know for a fact he was with me, and I know we didn't do it.
The witness seems convinced that James had nothing to do with Gene and Keith's murder. But it's hard to imagine why James would confess to a crime that he didn't commit. Well, we really appreciate you coming down.
No kidding.
Got a lot of stuff. If you think of anything,
Believe me, I'll let you know.
we're going to see Brandon Fortish, who was one of the members of the teenage group that was implicated by James as being involved in the murder. I figured the best angle with this is talking to him about who he's running with back then. That'll give us kind of a gauge on how much he's going to lie.
There you go.
So investigation's tricky because James has implicated Brandon in this double murder.
Hey, Brandon.
But we also have to approach Brandon like a potential witness against James.
All I know is I got arrested supposedly for 2 counts of murder, and somebody burned a house down over in that area somewhere.
Okay.
And White Settlement Police Department kind of had it in for me to begin with. Listen, there was an incident where me and a couple of them guys got to drinking one night, and we found this old wrecked car, and we set it on fire. After that, I was accused of multiple arsons. I'm innocent, okay? I know that James was called in, and he was interrogated to the point where he signed a statement saying that I did it.
Yeah.
Because he was terrified. Me and him got in a huge argument about that.
Well, I would think so.
Apologized.
Problem is, he implicated you, but the problem in our world is he implicates himself. And usually, when you implicate yourself in something, then it's believable, okay?
I mean, I'm willing to take a polygraph test, whatever you would have me to do. I did not commit those crimes.
In my experience, guilty people don't usually volunteer to take a polygraph test. With the interview and Brandon volunteering to take a polygraph, indicates to me he's not guilty of this crime. There's no gas back that way.
Yeah, there's nothing back there. It's like they put the prison out in the middle of nowhere for a reason.
We've been able to locate Bryce Wilson from our teenager group, and he's currently incarcerated in the Texas Department of Corrections. So back then, and I wrote some notes just off what the police had written in their report, that you had said that they, meaning Brandon, James, and Jason, went over, threw a brick through the back door, they went upstairs, cut both the guys' throats, and then they burned the house with gas. Did you ever say all that?
No, I never said all that.
You never said all that.
I never said any of that. Listen.
Because James made a confession. And
they say that he made a confession, but they also say I said that. And I know I didn't say that.
Okay.
No, I mean, if you're looking at a couple kids for doing some shit like that's some mafia type shit.
Did James ever brag around that he did that, whether he did it or not?
No, but I do know that when they had us in that police station, that I could hear him crying
Do you remember how y'all got implicated in this?
I heard that there was an informant guy that gave them that story and then required an award. That's what I heard.
Did you ever hear who did that?
Yeah, it was a guy named...
All right.
Hey, man, appreciate it. According to Bryce, James was forced into giving a false confession. It's also possible that James was so young he felt intimidated or confused. But we can check out Bryce's claim that a tipster implicated the teenage group to begin with. He said, it was all a big hoax, basically.
We've looked into Bryce Wilson's claim that a paid tipster is the one who implicated the teenager group in Jean and Keith's murders.
They were prone to call them Crime Stoppers a lot.
Was that how they tried to make money?
Yeah. So it wouldn't be out of character if called and said, hey, James did this. Yeah, that would not be out of character.
We can't confirm the identity of the tipster because it was received anonymously, but there is evidence that a phone tip was called in implicating the teenagers, and the caller may have received reward money for doing so.
These four come into the picture all because that story to Crime Stoppers, and he did it to collect money. That's all it was.
Yeah.
We had some false confessions going on. They were young.
And those kids can't keep their mouths shut. The police would have heard it on the street. I mean, they're 14, 13, 17.
None of them were innocent, but they were innocent of this murder.
So I think we're pretty unanimous in this room that these four kids in our teenager group are completely innocent of all of this.
Correct.
You just want to have a seat right there for me?
Sure.
It's time to go back to square one and talk to the people who went to Jean's party, which was the last place Jean and Keith were seen alive.
Why don't we just talk about what you remember that night?
We went to this party, which consisted of very few people. Now, the boys, they were kind of goofy. I think they mentioned something about that they dropped a couple hits of acid. This was before the two, I'm going to call them the two creeps came in.
According to statements, we believe the two men this witness is talking about are our suspects, Randy Huggins and Butch Bailey.
They were kind of like looking around and kind of scoping things out. I assumed at the time that at least Eugene knew them. But I remember asking him, like, who are they? And he goes, I don't know.
Why do you think they came to the party?
I think they were crashing the party to see if there was anything that they could get from the party, any drugs, booze. You know, there might have been something said about money. My more wise hindsight is that these guys, being kind of predatory the way they were, could have very well been there to harm them.
I got the feeling that the creepy guys knew that they were more vulnerable.
Yes, oh, absolutely. They were very defenseless.
What this witness has to say about Randy and Butch makes you wonder if they showed up at Jean's party with the intent of getting a hold of that $3,000. There was nothing in Butch's criminal history about criminal mischief, arson, anything like that, right? Butch Bailey is Donald Wright's cousin, and he lived in Donald Wright's father's home.
Hi, I'm Detective Callahan.
Hello, I'm Butch Bailey.
We want to see what he has to say about that night, about why he went to the party, and who might be involved in Jean and Keith's murders. On the night of the party, you were with Randy. Do you remember how y'all went home from the party?
I vaguely remember him being at the party, having a few drinks, that's about it.
Let me read this to you. These are summary notes that the cop made from back then after talking to you. Butch advised that he and Randy had gone to the party. There were no problems during the party, and that he and Randy left the party before midnight, leaving Keith and Eugene there.
I can't even put the names to the faces and stuff like that.
All right. We're curious about Randy's walk home. He had a perfectly good ride with you.
I don't recall, I really don't.
But you know why we're asking that, because he separates himself from you. Right. You go straight home, he doesn't. What did he do when he separated himself from you? Help us. What else are we not asking you to get to that point?
Ladies, I can sit here and guesstimate, but the reality of this thing is, I could not recall Ricky's name, Randy's name, until you guys just gave them to me. If I can't recall a name, how am I going to recall why he would not have rode with me?
Butch doesn't seem to remember very much about that night. That might mean that he just has a bad memory, or he's trying to protect himself or somebody else. There are some things that worry us about Donald having to do with the night of the fire.
Well, I don't think there's anything to worry about.
How come?
Because he's like a brother to me. He's a kind of hard person.
Okay.
He's Gerald, a great guy.
Well,
he had a drug problem.
What kind of drugs?
He liked doing meth.
Okay. And I guess what that makes us worry about is that one night when he was on meth, if something crazy could have happened.
I see where you're going with that, but I don't feel that I don't have that in here.
The only thing that Butch does seem to be clear on is that Donald did not commit these murders.
They said he gets off at 4:30, right?
5:30. They close at 5:30.
Randy Huggins was another suspect in the Wright group who showed up at Gene's party the night Gene and Keith were killed. You mind if we just talk to him, visit with him? Free world. He was also at the time an escapee from a Missouri prison work furlough and walked home from the party that night even though he had a ride.
Do you recall why you walked home that night?
Man, I really don't remember, honestly. But I walked a lot back then. You know, hell, I was 100 pounds less. You know what I mean?
You've already said yourself, you were looking over your shoulder all the time. Every time you saw the cops, you were shitting yourself. You were high, you were probably drunk, and there were reports of acid being done there that night. Do you remember?
I didn't do no acid.
You know you didn't do no acid? Okay.
I've never done that.
The fact that you walk home, you're at a party you don't belong at, everybody talks about it.
Honestly, I'm not lying to you guys. Nothing happened while I was there. With Butch or nobody. When we left, they were still there.
They being?
Gene.
Gene?
And I think he had a guy or two there still when we left.
Your statement says when you and Butch left, you were the last two there. Our information is that you know.
Listen, if I knew, I'd tell you guys. I would have told them then.
Randy has a good answer for everything. But when you look at a map and you see the shortest distance between his house and Gene's house, the route he took home doesn't make any sense.
All right, well, guys, we done?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know where I work. You know where I live.
Yeah, we do.
I'm not hard to find.
So we're not making any progress with the Wright group at all.
We're investigating the 23-year-old murder of Gene Giddens and Keith Durrington, where we believe the motive was the $3,000 in cash that Gene had that day.
Did we bring any of the photos?
I got them on my phone.
He's got them on great. Oh, you don't have pictures anymore. You done got high-tech.
High-tech, man.
You know, when you don't carry one of those Star Trek communicator flip phones, you can do that.
Look at that flip phone. I'm waiting for pay phones to come back.
Right?
Information developed after the time of the murders demonstrates that the neighbor group knew that Gene had that money from cashing that check, because two of them sold LSD and weed to Gene.
When Wes died, she said the one thing she'd hate to have to do is to tell her daughter that not only was her daddy murdered, her daddy was also a murderer.
One of the suspects, Wes Taylor, was murdered a few years ago. We were able to locate a former girlfriend of Wes. She and Wes were dating at the time of the murders. And we're hoping that maybe Wes told us something about him years ago.
Let's kind of start from the beginning, if you would. Not necessarily with the murder and the fire, but what about your and Wes's relationship?
Wes and I had a very volatile relationship.
Did you?
Yes.
Volatile or violent or both?
No, we pushed each other around, but we didn't hit each other.
Oh, really?
I mean, it was more, there was a lot of anger, a lot of emotion.
What about taking Gene to cash his check?
I remember taking him, I took him to the check cashing place.
Do you remember how much the check was for? Or was it
Several
different?
thousand.
To your knowledge, was he blabbermouth, hey, I've got a lot of money coming, I'm having a party Saturday night?
Yeah, I do remember him saying, yeah, because he wanted to buy alcohol and he wanted to buy drugs. I think he was sending the word out that he wanted stuff.
He wanted to get the word out on the street that he was looking to buy something?
And I know Wes did hook him up.
Do you remember what he hooked him up with?
Sheets of acid.
So he didn't have any issue selling to Gene then?
He didn't. He wasn't friends with Gene.
But it's business.
But I'm going to get this for him because he probably got a cut. I cannot say that if it did happen and he was the person that did it, that it was because of money. Because Wes was not geared that way.
He wouldn't have killed somebody over money.
And he wouldn't have killed him over being gay?
No.
Do you think he would have been able to hide it from you for all those years, especially through the investigation, had he done it?
He was able to keep a lot of things from me, and I turned a blind eye to a lot of stuff. But I really think that I might have been sharp enough to know that he murdered two guys next door.
All right, dear.
Thank you. Take care.
When talking to the girlfriend, she was very candid, very honest in her description of Wes and their relationship, both the good and the bad. I don't see any reason that she would not tell us the truth, especially since Wes has already died.
Looks like he's got kiddos.
Yeah.
How you doing, sir?
Good, how are you?
We haven't managed to track down Jason Inman, but we have found another suspect in the neighbor group, TJ Scooble, who moved out of White Settlement only weeks after the murders.
That night, when someone knocked on the door asking where the guy next door, whatever his name was,
Gene?
I think, yeah, and asked where he'd been. I said, I haven't seen him all day. He said, well, his house is on fire. And I could see the glow from the fire of the house on the house across the street. I went out there, I was like, holy crap.
What was Gene like back then?
Gene was just a nice person. It's like, someone's nice to me, I'm gonna be nice back to them.
So are these the people that live with you?
That looks like one of the guys that was there a lot. So I do remember this guy, Wes. I didn't have really any close ties to any of those people. I was just up there because of my girlfriend at the time, Marla.
Do you remember anything about the drug dealer ripping off?
Well, see, because I wasn't there whenever they did that, but I just remember them saying something about Eugene came into a lot of money from somewhere. But I remember they went to that party that night.
Did you ever see anything the whole time you were in White Settlement that let you know who hurt and killed Eugene?
Oh, no, absolutely not. If I knew, I would tell you. I'm not scared to be a narc or a snitch, you know? I want that son of a bitch caught.
Okay, so let's start focusing on the next door neighbor group, the people that live next to Gene. What do y'all think about that group?
I think they can be eliminated after talking to everybody, and not just TJ, but also with the lady friend.
I think there was just a lot of finger pointing back then, but there's never been anything else.
I think the only reason they're suspects to begin with is because they delivered dope that night.
All right, so we're going to mark off Jason Inman, TJ Scooble, and Wes Taylor, the next door neighbor group. We've eliminated all of our suspects in our teenager group and our neighbor group. And we ought to feel like we're getting closer to figuring out who killed Gene and Keith, but there are still so many unanswered questions. Frustration continues. All right, let's knock it out. Is that okay?
I'm very ready.
All we have left to pursue at this point is our final suspect in the right group. Since we already interviewed Butch and Randy and Donald last week,
I don't know nothing about this murder.
Now it's time to talk to Randy's brother, Ricky Huggins.
Ricky? Yes. Detective Callahan.
How you doing?
Hi, you want to come over here and sit in my truck with me so we can stay out of the heat?
Yes.
Ricky says he was with his wife the night of the murders and he did not go to the party. But he's also an arsonist, and Gene and Keith's crime scene involved fire.
We'll start with that fire. I mean, you remember that fire?
Yeah, I wake up to an orange glow coming in through the window, and I look out, woke my wife up, and I told her, I said, hey, Gene, his house is on fire.
Ricky, after all this happened, and y'all are all sitting around going, what in the hell happened over there? Did a discussion come up about the party that happened that night before the fire?
Saturday night, I never seen nobody over there all weekend.
What about your brother being there? Why would your brother want to be there?
I don't have a clue.
So you never asked him afterwards, what the hell happened at the party? Y'all are at a party and house ends up getting burned up.
I didn't know they actually went to the party. I didn't know that about it.
It's odd that Ricky didn't know anything about the party when you factor in his previous statements. Look at this, what you said right here when you gave your statement. Read that out loud.
Ricky advised that he was invited to the party. I don't remember getting invited to a party.
Keep going.
Okay. But didn't go because of his wife, Veronica, who disapproved of his drinking.
Does that help you remember it?
I don't remember getting invited to a party, but yes, I was drinking. I did drink a lot back then.
We don't know if Ricky's just using his past drinking as his excuse or he really doesn't remember. But he does have a criminal history that we want to learn more about. Did you ever get arrested for anything at all in Missouri?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yes.
Tell me what I'm going to write down.
It's an extensive record here.
Any arsons?
In the 70s. In a motel room. We was all partying, drinking, and everything. And Angie kept throwing lit cigarettes at me. Bam, bam. And I kept grabbing her, putting them out. I threw one at her, and she rubbed it in the mattress, but caught the mattress on fire. I got charged with arson.
Is that the only time you've been charged with anything close to an arson?
No. And then when I went to prison the second time, that's what I went to prison the second time over, was a 68 Mustang. Got drunk on whiskey. Stole it, run the crap out of it, ran to a tree, stripped it, and burned it.
Okay, so you burned up a car. Anything else?
No, that's it.
You didn't set the fires for that house?
No, nothing.
Okay.
I've done nothing
wrong. You're not protecting any of the people in your world who you think or know did it?
I'm not protecting. I ain't going to protect nobody. If I knew who did it, I'd tell you. I want answers, too. Gene was a good person.
Ricky's arson history puts him on our suspect list. But the details of those crimes turned out to be less serious than we thought. 3 trailers and a horse and a shed and a gate.
This is it.
Stu, Allen, and I have tracked down Donald's brother in the hopes of trying to find out more about Donald and what might have been happening in Donald's world back then.
Do you remember hearing about the murders that happened back in 1992, back in White Settlement, involving those two guys?
That Gene Giddens guy.
You knew Gene?
Yeah, I knew him. I went to school with him.
You went to school with him?
Yeah, we were in about the same grade.
Did you ever go over to any parties at Gene's house?
Oh, yeah.
How many times did Donald go to the parties with you at Gene's house?
I know he went twice with me.
Okay.
That I went.
When he says that Donald actually went to Gene's parties, I'm going, dang. We've all been wondering whether Donald had a connection, and now we know that he did. Wasn't that around the same time Donald was kind of using a lot of meth?
Yeah. Yeah, he did that. Now, he got tied up with the wrong people on that. I love my brother, man. I love him. I wish he'd straighten up.
I do too, but it sure sounds like when he gets on meth, he does some crazy stuff.
The last time I seen him, when he was on it, it just seemed like he changed.
Well, thank you for answering our questions today. If you think of something, you call Stu.
I sure will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
David Wright can prove that Donald knew Gene, but that's a far stretch from proving that Donald committed this double murder. And right now, we're out of people to talk to. I think that we've done a good job of handling the Donald Wright, Laura Walsh case, but look at this board on the other case.
Well, the people we've talked to, they're old dopers, or some of them are still continuing to use, and their memories have not been the best.
I can't put the names to the faces and stuff like that.
Yeah, I run into what I think were a lot of selective memories, too, for people that weren't the best citizens back then.
Listen, if I knew, I'd tell you guys. I would have told them then.
You know, the exception is Ricky Huggins. His arsons turned out to be really lame, and he's always had an alibi for that night.
I think he was just a suspect by association.
Yeah, we still got Donald glaring at us, and Randy, and Butch.
You know, you can put Randy and Butch at the party.
But at this point, we can't say that Randy or Butch or Donald had anything to do with this crime.
It's all coincidence.
After all we've done and all we've seen and talked to, it's pretty frustrating to have worked so hard and found so little. Kind of depressing.
I feel like we're spinning wheels in mud. The ranger listened to the phone call. He says really hard to tell if he's just talking about the one or both.
Earlier today, Alan heard from Texas Ranger James Holland, who's been helping out on the case. The prison where Donald's being held called the ranger to tell him that they recorded a very interesting phone call that Donald made.
What's going on with you? Anything different?
Texas Rangers come up here. They say they got evidence that I was the one that done a murder a long time ago.
All I can tell you is search your soul, man.
I'm tired of running and hiding. But I'm going to make it right. I've got it after that and then after he's sober.
He sounds like he's reaching out to tell us the story.
Hold that thought. The Texas Ranger and Alan Brown are headed back to the TDC unit where Donald's being held to see if Donald has changed his story about Laura or about Gene and Keith's murder. We don't know what to expect from this visit to Donald Wright this time. You never take on a cold case with your only play, the hope that the suspect is going to confess, but that's what we're looking at right now. Our hope is that the Ranger and Alan can perform a miracle, because we don't want to tell two different families that they're never going to get justice.
Hey, Alan.
Hey, Stu.
Just want to know what came out of this.
Hey, the lawyers can deal with the legal issues, but if he tries to take the stand, he's going to have big problems with what he just said.
What'd y'all find out?
Donald came in, and
I'm summarizing all of this, but,
the Ranger's like, the ball's in your court. You know, what do you got for us? And he said, I'm going to go back to Tarrant County.
And he says, and I'm going to give you the other one when you get me back to Tarrant County.
I'm going to give you the double.
Did y'all say, are you talking about Gene and Keith to him?
He was pretty clear he means the double.
But y'all made it clear he's not throwing Butch or Randy under the bus, it's him.
Ranger asked him straight up,
are we looking for another actor in the double besides you? And he said, no, it's just me.
I'm going to try all three.
That sounds
Freaking
fantastic.
amazing.
Fantastic. Just get him back here.
Thank you, Alan. It's amazing. All right.
Wow,
Holy shit.
I can't freaking believe
I
it.
can't either.
I know. Seriously, I gave up. I gave up. I was already thinking of what we're going to tell the family.
Oh, I know.
Oh, my God, a miracle happened.
Confessions just don't happen like that. Donald probably realized once he knew he was done on one, that what's it going to hurt, and it gives him a little bit of a bargaining chip, allowing us to close another case. I'm still wrapping my brain around it.
How long is that going to take?
A while. It's going to take a while.
After 23 years of just wanting to have an idea who did this, the fact that you're telling them what you can today, it's going to be pretty amazing for them. We're on our way to tell Jean and Keith's families the good news about their case. This is the best part of the job. Thank you. Good morning. What are y'all doing this morning? We want to be real careful with what we tell Jean and Keith's family because this is still ongoing and there are still a lot of legal decisions that need to be made. So the news we have for y'all today is this.
We're going to be, probably within the next few weeks, presenting this case to the district attorney.
That's great. Okay.
And we just want to make sure we get it absolutely perfect.
He admits that he's the one that committed both of these crimes.
To know that there really is some justice means a lot. I were able to talk to him. I would tell him that we definitely miss you and that they got the guy that did you wrong.
This is probably the first time I've cried about it. I've always tried to be so strong. And this is the first time I've gotten to feel this feeling, and it's awesome. It is so awesome.
We've spent 23 years not knowing anything, and there's a lot of satisfaction in the truth.
Y'all have been through the most horrible thing anyone can go through, especially you, because he was your son. No matter what we tell you, it doesn't bring Jean back. It doesn't bring Keith back. We know that. We just want you to know that the person who did this to Keith and Jean has been found and caught, and it's all going to be okay.